People are paying attention to how you lead. Football's only for 4 years. I said, but I want you guys to really understand the bigger picture and scheme of life. So I always will share something. What I'm saying will help build them into what they are supposed to be and making sure that they understand that they have a bright future and a lot of things are ahead of them. Be yourself, be authentic, because you can be affecting people in so many different ways that you're not really paying attention to.
Welcome to the Rendered Hope podcast. I am your host, Phillip Carroll, and it is so exciting to be with you once again. Today we have a great episode. I was able to be joined by my friend, Desmond Wiggins. He is a pastor, a father, a business owner, a coach, and he does so much. So today you're going to hear about a few things. Just what does he have going on in his life, how he uses different techniques and strategies to manage his time and manage his different jobs and how he interacts with people on a daily basis. I'm so excited for you guys to hear it. So without further ado, here is my interview with Desmond Wiggins. So good to be with you today. You are one of the people that I was really looking forward to having as a guest on this podcast, just because of who you are and what you do and what I know about you. And I'm just excited to introduce you to this audience. Before we get started, could you just kind of introduce yourself and let them know what you do?
Absolutely. Wow, a lot. I'll say that. So I am a senior pastor of a church, as well as I am a father. I have 4 kids. I'm a husband. I've been married for 15 years. And I also coach. I am a head coach of my alma mater high school and two of my favorite sports. So I know this. I'm just so excited about it because again, I coach. I'm the head coach of my football team, my high school football team, as well as I am the head coach of my wrestling team, which is my two favorite sports, my sports that I played in high school and college. And it's such a joy to be able to coach both of them at the school that I attended. So I'm the head coach for both of those, as well as me and my wife own two businesses. One is a day spa for little girls that we've came up with. She came up with the idea about 4 years ago, and we just kind of started rocking and rolling with it, and it's going well. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at, and that's what I do.
Wow, I didn't even know that last part. So no matter what you're doing in life, any time of day, the fact is you're dealing with people in
Absolutely.
some way, shape, or form. And I know just with the busyness of your schedule, even though it's summer vacation, you got summer workouts, you still got the kids at home, you got these businesses that need to be attended to, you have the church folk that you need to see or talk to on a daily basis. How do you feel like you've grown in your ability to manage your time and really just give your priority to these things when you need to?
Whew. I would say a lot. I think, one of the things I've learned is that you don't know your a capacity or how much capacity you have until you stretch yourself. And so one of the things was that every time I've added on something, people would say to me like, "Oh man, you're crazy," or "I don't know if you can do that." And usually I look at it as a challenge, and especially if it's something that I'm excited about doing, something that I enjoy doing, something that I have a passion for. I say this often that if you have a passion for something, you'll find time for it. So I've learned that personally, like I've learned how to just manage. I have a mentor of mine who taught me years ago to break my day down into 30-minute increments. And then just keep a schedule and actually leave a 2 hour window of time where you just don't know what may happen in the day, so that people aren't controlling your time to say, "Hey, I'll get back to you at this time of the day," knowing that you've allotted that time for things. So it's just like just learning how to stretch, having people in my life teaching me how to handle time properly, because that's the greatest commodity that we have is time. And that's the thing. Like I said, just being stretched by different situations and circumstances.
That's a really actually powerful principle. I know for myself, as I continue to make myself busier and do more and try to handle more, sometimes I feel like I have a good handle on it. And then sometimes I'm like, man, there's just not enough time in my life to do these things excellently. And what I've found is having to set my order of priority and figure
Mhm.
out what I can let go and what I can, almost let die to an extent, right? And it's just so often that we find ourselves in situations where our minds are moving so quickly that we want to do so much in so little time and
Mhm.
not fall short in our other commitments. As it pertains to you, because you deal so heavily with people and not with things like merchandise or product, you have a limited amount of time to really focus on certain things, because the things that you're focused on affect other people,
Absolutely.
whether it's your counseling, um, studying, spending time with your children, or even game planning and figuring out what you're going to do as a coach, and
Yeah.
giving your attention to the parents and to the players and to the participants. How do you see a difference in your life in terms of having to put on your pastor hat and your parent hat and your husband hat and your business owner hat? Do you feel like sometimes the stretch comes together, or do you feel like sometimes you really have to put an extra strain on yourself to adjust to the different patterns of life? You talked about giving it 30-minute increments and really segmenting your day. Is that really just something you've had to develop over time, or do you find that you still struggle in those areas at times?
Good question. I would say this is that even though I've put that in, that's a template to try to keep myself as committed as possible to those times,
For
but it
sure.
doesn't always happen that way. And I know that. And so I'm comfortable with that. But what I will say is that having all of these different hats, is what you were saying too. I've learned how to, I would say, or I'm learning how to blend them together. It's interesting that I will learn things from being a football coach that I apply to leading or pastoring full blown adults and people. And the same thing with leading adults is the same, some things I'm able to apply to my coaching. And so they've kind of blended together in a good way, and just different things that I use in team building, because I can do team building with my leadership and as well as doing team building with my football team. And the interesting dynamic, that the other thing too, as well as coaching football, that I didn't realize as much, but not only am I leading my football team, but I'm also leading a coaching staff. My coaching staff is of 12 full blown adult men, that I have to just give game plans to lay out some things for them, how I want practice to go, how I want them to coach a certain position, what I'm looking for, what our theme is for the year, what's our vision for the year. And so those things that I tell my football coaches outside of them and make sure they're implemented to the team, it's the same thing I actually do from a pastoral standpoint, is with my leadership team. Those are my admin team, making sure y'all are spreading what we're saying the vision is for the year. And so like a lot of times I see like they mesh together, and it helps a lot. But again, like I said, the managing of the time, I'm learning how to do that day by day to make sure I'm staying, as much as you said before. It's hard to keep, everything as your mind is moving, and ideas are coming up and different things that you want to get done. But I try to do my best because, again, like I said, I value people's time as well as I value my own.
I think what I've noticed about people, and specifically you in your situation, that leaders are leaders, right? We can't decide to turn it off. I know for me, from the moment that I began to step into different areas of leadership, in the financial space and in the professional space and now in the ministerial space, there's never an opportunity for me to show up and say, let me just sit in the back and be normal and, you know, clock in, clock out, and even in every job I've had, it's like within a few months, it's like, hey, there's something special about you. You need to go for a higher up position. And I think for you, especially in the school space, because schools are always looking for people who are responsible and
Absolutely.
going to show leadership and become a good role model for the kids. And I think with you going into it, and I know in my county where I grew up, head coaches all had to have a educating job too, right? You have to be a teacher of some sort, make yourself available on a day-to-day basis. So you can't even just show up and do what you want to do. You have
Mhm.
to do all of these other things just to get to what you want to do. And that kind of applies, I'm sure, in parenthood, where you can't just be who you want to be, but you have to keep the children as a priority, especially with you having 4 kids. Man,
Yeah.
I thought you had 3, if
No,
I'm honest. But
no,
man,
we
it's
got
like
four, man. We got
that
four.
that throws a wrench in your plans, because you can't even say like, I'm going to be here and do this and this is my schedule. No, because now you have kids in school. You have,
Mhm.
as they get older, they have more needs. They need that father presence in their life. So it's just really commendable what you're doing and what you've set your mind to. And I know like a lot of the things you're doing, because you have such a mind to be excellent, it's going to come together in the right way.
Appreciate you.
When it comes to like your coaching and your pastoral heart and even your business, where does this all come from? Where does this work ethic come from to not quote unquote just be normal and do one thing?
It's good. Good. I will say this. It comes, of course, my relationship with God, but also it comes from the fact that I've, I was raised to like work hard. I just had this conversation with my son. My son's my oldest, so I have a 14-year-old. As here goes the numbers for everybody. At 14,
Oh, take
my
notes.
son's my son is 14. He'll be 15 next month. And then all three, I had daughters right after that. So I went from one boy to three girls right after that. And my girls are 12, 9, and 6. So with that being said, and they're all different personality
So what
types.
you're saying is we're waiting for two more boys.
No, 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 no. Shop is shut down, closed down. It's officially closed. Shop is closed down. So with that being said, um, my son, it's interesting because every generation is a little bit different. I grew up when I was about 10, 11 years old. My grandfather and my father and my uncle, they all had construction business. So for me, when I was 10, 11 years old, the summers were, 2 or 3 days a week getting up and working construction, getting up at 5 in the morning and actually going to work with them. And so I believe, and then also the sport of wrestling, I can't explain how much that did for me. It built so much discipline. I've traveled the world. I've I'm about to say preach. I've wrestled all over the place, all over the United States. I've wrestled in Canada. I've wrestled just all over the place. And so wrestling taught me a ton of discipline growing up. That's one of the things I tell people, putting their kids in activities and different things. It teaches them discipline and how to keep goals and stuff like that. So wrestling was a big part of it, and the work ethic that I had to have in the summers with my parents. So it just instilled in me just the ability to work and do things the right way, and just to continue to push forward to what your goals and your missions are. So I would account a lot of that to that. And other part of it too is that a lot of what I do is connecting to like helping people. Like I just pastoring, coaching. I just enjoy to see, like, especially when my kids win. Like I just love to see them, do well. I love to help people and push people to their future, to their destiny, what they are. You know what I mean? High school, I have a great time. This is a time where I'm shaping and molding kids. I had a parent come to me. We just had a high school graduation. And when the parents came to me with like tears in their eyes and just hugged me and said, "You don't know how much you've done for my son. You've helped really raise him." And so like that brings me the joy, and it gives me the passion and the desire to do what I do at the way that I do it. It's not just coaching. It's not just I love the sport. I love helping mold lives into what they're designed to be. And so that's one of the reasons why I think I have such a zeal and a passion for what I do. And the business aspect is teaching my kids that they can be able to do things outside of the spectrum of just working for someone. If you have an idea and you want to go forward with your vision, we push our kids all the time, me and my wife, to take challenges and go further in the day as well.
That's awesome. I know you're going into your second year as a head football coach, right?
Correct.
How long have you been coaching wrestling?
7 years. I was assistant for 5 years, and then the head guy for 2 years.
Okay, wow. So it's like, at what point in your life? Because you were over at church first, and then how was that transition for you to say, "Hey, I feel like I have the space to make time and commit myself to becoming a wrestling coach," because you didn't do both at the same time. You really had to. I'm sure it was a long process of you with discussions with your wife, and
Oh yeah.
is this something that I should do? Because I'm sure it was a passion for you. Because for those who don't know, amateur wrestling doesn't provide tons of opportunities as other sports do, right? Either you go to the Olympics or you coach,
Yep.
right? You don't get to just continue
You
your
know it.
career, um, which is why a lot will either go into other sports. And we just saw Gable Steveson go from the Olympics
Look at
to
you. Look at
go to
you.
go to the
Look at
Bills.
you.
Look, I know a
Look
little bit
at
about them.
you.
So it's like just those opportunities of like not having the room to grow. And a lot of them, there's such a mindset when you're the guy. you don't want to just go into coaching, right? Because you're going to look at the coaches as the old folk. Um, that's just how it is sometimes, right?
Mm.
So for you, what did that process look like of, you know what, I used to love this sport, I still love the sport, and now I want to go into coaching the sport? Because I'm sure your experience as a pastor really said, hey, I think high school is the way to go because of the opportunity, as you said, to mold and to shape and to influence. And it's like that added effect of being able to coach.
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
Oh man, it was interesting. So to kind of tell you from the football, the wrestling perspective, it was a friend of mine who had reached out to me, and 7 years, like 7 8 years ago, he reached out to me. He said, "Desmond, I think you'd be a great coach. Not only that I know you know how well you know the sport, you would help these kids a ton." I was good in high school. I was really really good. So like the kids have seen my name on the wall, and he was like, "Man, this will help the program X Y Z." And I was like, man, I don't know if I really got the time. And when I got into it, when I started training, I was training this one kid who was really good on the team that his parents asked me, they was paying me to help him. And I just started loving it. And I was like, wow, I really like this. And then it just kind of started building from there with wrestling. And I became the assistant at the high school because they wanted me to be there because of just, what I had done there. And then eventually the head coach ended up stepping down. I interviewed for that job and then I got it. And then football, if anyone knows anything about high school football, it doesn't matter where it's at. It's like King Kong, right? It is what it is because it's high school football. No matter how good or bad, it's the thing that runs. So I played football in college. I always loved football, and I just always thought about like running a program. I think what happened to, and I'm just gonna be honest, my favorite player growing up was Deion Sanders. So when I saw Deion Sanders coaching in college, my wheels started turning a little bit because I started noticing how much he was able to help mold young men. And so I was like, you know what? If a job opportunity ever opens up, like it never really was dawning on me. It dawned on me because my first year as the head wrestling coach, the football team at my high school went 0-9. So for me, it's kind of like I don't want to see my school do well. And I'm sitting there talking to these kids, and I could see they were like demoralized. And when they went 0-9 that one season, the head coach for that year decided to resign. So when he resigned, basically the door opened up, and the kids were coming to me like, man, coach, it would be great if you coach. And I'm like, man, that'd be too much. But I just kept seeing the passion in those kids' eyes that wouldn't allow me not to apply. So I applied for the job. And I just share this quick testimony with you too, because you're talking about leadership and how important it is. And you were mentioning that to me as we were talking and all of that. Is I had at a wrestling match, I applied for the football job. There were 20 applicants who applied.
Wow.
So it wasn't like, yeah. So 20 guys had applied for the head coaching job at my high school because my high school is an interesting space. It's a unique space where you can do well if you build the program right. So basically, we had 20 applicants. I think maybe one or two were actually two or three were alumni, and the others were just outside people who wanted to be a head coach. And so I was at a wrestling match, and my superintendent was there. And I didn't know this, but I knew he was at the match. I saw him at the match. And what happened was one of the parents kind of got really riled up in the match, and there was a lot of things happening. And I was able to go to the parent, calm the parent down, and then deal with the wrestling match and just kind of just ease the whole gym in a sense. And I just wasn't thinking about it. I was just doing what I do. And then later on, when I went through the interview process, and then eventually, like a month later, I got hired. I interviewed 3 times. When I got hired, the superintendent said to me, Desmond, I knew you were our head coach when I saw the way you handled that situation.
Wow.
And that right there blessed me a lot because it's like people are paying attention to how you lead. And so right then and there, that was a sidebar story, but I just wanted to add that just to encourage people. Like, you don't know who's paying attention. Sometimes we're just trying to do things in life just to do it, but just be yourself, be authentic, grow. You don't know who's looking at you, what you're doing, how you're doing it, because you can be affecting people in so many different ways that you're not really paying attention to. So that's what kind of got me the zeal of doing it again, as the kids asking me to coach football. And I love the sport. And of course, as you said, me and my wife, Yannick, we had some conversations. And when they offered me the job, I was like, I don't know if this opportunity is going to come around ever again. And I said, let's just take it right now. And go by it every 4 years. I'll evaluate where I'm at, where the church is, where our family is, and then see if I want to continue to do it or not.
So in about 3 years, I expect to see you at an HBCU, um, building a program.
Oh man, hey, we'll see. We'll see.
What sticks out to me about your story is just the fact that it had nothing to do with your proficiency in football when he made his decision. I think about even movies like I saw a couple months ago. I rewatched Coach Carter, right, with
Hmm.
Samuel L. Jackson, and just the opening with the lack of leadership and his decisions in practices to make it about teamwork, right?
Yep.
I think for the high school level, I think it's fairly safe to say that people know who's going to go pro and people who know who this is it and people know who's going to go D1, D2, D3. But what everybody can benefit from is solid leadership and good
Yep.
coaching and building those foundations and principles. I know for me, and I'm sure for you, you can still remember the coaches that made the biggest impact in your life. When it comes to those things like life lessons and I think about like even your process, right? Um, of the kids, you're a great wrestling coach. Why don't you become our football coach too? And it's
Hmm.
like what you talked about building a program. We think about and this can relate a little bit to the church too. When people show up, you don't know who's going through what, so you don't want to waste any services. But in the same way,
Hmm.
when it comes to these high school kids, some might be a senior. Not everybody has 4 years left. And even in the process of building that program for those who went 0-9, that could have been their future.
Right.
So it's like making every year count, and if not, from a sports standpoint, then like what are you leaving with? If you're someone who can be molded in your senior year, what can you carry into the next level of your education? What are the work habits you can take into your job? What kind of person are you going to be when you leave this place?
Hmm.
And that speaks so many volumes just in what you said about the parent coming to you at the graduation.
Yep.
Because from a head point of view, you've only been doing it for 2 years.
Hmm.
And that'll be far superior to the impact that you could have had as an assistant for the 5 years, just
Right.
because of the level and authority that you've been given. you
Hmm.
know what are some of the personal goals you have when it comes to growing as a coach? Because we can all say I want to win a championship and all of those great things, but what are some of the personal goals you have set for yourself as a coach?
Wow, that's a good question. Me personally, well, of course, you said winning, but my thing is, I look at how effective I am of changing these kids' lives. Like I just have a measuring stick of just realizing, is their behaviors changing? Are they paying attention? Are they, um, being respectful to each other and to their coaches? That's one of the things. The other thing is I want to, on a personal level, just making sure that I am helping these kids not to just learn the game, but like I said, just understanding life. One of the things I do every week, once a week, is on middle of the week, I will have a saying or some kind of conversation that will connect football to life and life to football. So that they'll understand a bigger picture that, like I said, I only have you guys for 4 years. And I said, football is only for 4 years. I said, but I want you guys to really understand the bigger picture and scheme of life. So always will share something. And so one of the things is that my goal is that what I'm saying will help build them into what they are supposed to be and making sure that they understand that they have a bright future and a lot of things are ahead of them. Um, and again, like I said, if I want to say also personally, is for me, this is going to be a funny one, but um, just to learn the game even more. Like I know the game very, very well. I'm a defensive guy. So my thing is always, I've learned offense. I have an offensive coordinator who I depend on often. But my job is to continue to learn more aspects of the game and to help the kids and put them in the best position that they can to be successful. And that's what we're doing even right now because we're actually in our we're not in training camp per se, but we are in practice mode right now. We started practicing once the last week of school. As soon as we got clearance to practice, we started practicing and just trying to put these
Practice,
kids.
not even just workouts, but practice,
Oh, we practicing.
man.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We
I
practicing.
know, I know. When I was in high school, we couldn't even touch the pads until August.
Oh yeah, no, they done changed that rule now. Well, we're not hitting yet, but we out there running drills, ball, going through plays, going through our install, all of that. Now they've changed it in the state of New Jersey that we can start once spring sports is over.
Wow. Do you guys still are you still allowed to do 2 days?
Yes and no. So it's interesting. We can. It's just that we just cut the second one really really short.
Kids these days, man, they'll never know.
No, 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 no.
Man.
No, they got heat temperatures now. If the field's too hot, you're not allowed to go outside. That wasn't the day, but that wasn't like it was back in the day.
Man, I remember, my senior year, we're running up a hill just to get to the water, and it's just like a little hose. And it's like you got 3 seconds and then you gotta get off and go back. And it's just like, man,
Yep,
let me take
absolutely.
a guess. When you were an assistant, oh no, you went straight to head coaching.
Straight for
But I
football,
feel
head to
like
head guy.
you would have been what, a defensive back coach if you were
Oh
an
yeah,
assistant?
that's
Yeah.
that's why I coach now. When I have a defensive back coach now, but I also go over there most of the time and just check on them and make sure they're doing what I want them to do.
Is that what you played when you were in school?
Yes, that's what Nick Saban. Nick Saban coaches the D backs too when he was at Alabama. That's his thing. So yeah, but that's what I played in school.
Right, you let him touch the offense and they're in trouble. But I think what's so important is I look at when it comes to high school coaching, my mind goes to Friday Night Lights, right, with Coach Eric Taylor. And have you ever considered telling your players like clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose?
No, I haven't. I
I think
got my
that's
own
what
sons.
I think that's the secret, man. And
Yeah,
just but even though that's a dramatized effort, it's so like it very much highlights just the fact that you're not just their football coach,
yeah,
because it'll be the spring and they're coming to you for advice and what should I do here, and can this is going on in my life. So I think it's so vital. Moving on from coaching, though, as a pastor, how has, and you touched on it a little bit, but how has been the impact been when it comes to, now that you've been a head coach for 2 years, in two different sports, and even dealing with coaching staffs, as you said, for football with 12 grown adults with needs and bills and experiences. How has that translated in your ability to understand people in your church? Because in ministry, we deal with people on a spiritual level, right? While they do come with financial needs and physical needs, we're not so concerned as much as we are with their spiritual development. But how have you been able to see them on a more holistic view and carry that into how you deal with them in a ministerial level?
that's good. And sidebar too, since you had mentioned Friday Night Lights, my kids they call me Coach Billy Baker. If you know who that is, that's from All Americans.
Okay, okay. Just let's hope. Just don't go near any buses. Okay.
I ain't gonna do
Just
that. Don't worry about that.
no
Don't worry
no
about
bus
that.
no
Don't worry,
bus crashes. No buses. I
don't worry
know.
about
I'm not going to spoil what happened to Coach Billy Baker, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, the kids have told me already. Anyway, I stopped watching it a few
ah,
seasons back,
okay,
so
okay,
yeah,
okay.
they already told me though. So
He reminds me of Mike Tomlin,
yeah,
but
I
it's all
got you.
good.
I got you. But yeah, I will say this: dealing with, like you said, as my coaching staff and holistic point of view. Yes, I believe in this. One of the things that's funny. One of our church themes and visions again is that we tell people experiencing God and enriching people, and so that's what we say often at our church because again we understand holistically like people of course we're developing people at the church spiritually, but this is the thing I've known is that if even though you're developing people spiritually, if their mental state ain't there, then they won't be able to be developed spiritually. I truly believe that like there's a side of God that people don't type into as far as the mind of God and understanding how sound your mind has to be. And so that's one of the things that I've really approached, I think, even in my walk with God and just my walk with just dealing with people is that where is your mind at? Like if your mind isn't right and your mind's not being developed properly, then we can't even really deal with you in the really spiritual aspects and things of that nature. And so same thing, even dealing with my coaching staff, I always want to make sure they all know that we have the same mind. as far as how we're coaching, how we're dealing with our players. Certain things I will or won't tolerate. Like I tell my leaders this too. I said, like, think about before you say what you're going to say to someone, think about, is it something that represents what I would say and what I would do? And so the same thing with my coaching staff. It's like, yo, I know we all individuals. I know we all coach differently. I said, but when it comes to tricky spaces, I'm like, you have to think about, would I recommend that? Would I be okay with that? Right. It's funny at my coaching staff because I have, I got pirates, everybody ain't saved. So I don't cuss, right? So since I don't cuss, in my office, we have what's called a swear jar.
Okay.
So this
But we do $10 bills around here.
so if you cussing, especially if you cuss at the kids, that's not tolerated. Like, but if I can handle cussing. They don't kill me. I'm all right. But if they do cuss, then they give money to the swear jar. One of my coaches, he just comes in first day of the week and just puts $20 in there. Because, because
You have to appreciate that.
I do. I do. I take that money and I just get everybody coffee and donuts usually when we have our coaches meeting and stuff like that. But yeah, I understand, like, it's a dynamic of just basically a blending of both. And like I said, it's the mindset, making sure people minds are right on both ends of the spectrum to be able to, number one, for them to be able to be effective in coaching. And then for us, the spiritual aspect of leading people in a church, spiritual, like I said, in church, their minds have to be right to be able to really receive from the Spirit and be able to do what they need to do.
Yeah, wow. It's just, I think when it comes to leadership, you can see the traits that are so similar in the people you lead on both levels, right? Whether it's your leadership team or your coaching staff. I think as individuals, we all have the desire to do things, even though we're not in charge, do things in our own way, right? So you talked about like your voice and your style and your preference when it comes to the decisions that they make. Have you really had to grow in that aspect of being the main leader in terms of dealing with them and their individuality? I'm sure you've had a lot of confrontations of people feeling almost isolated or left out because they don't get to put their own spin on things. But at the same time, when we all put our own flavor on a product, then it can become really chaotic. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard for people to really identify that and really understand that from a broader point of view, because in their mind they've been brought in to do a job, and they feel like they should be able to put their voice in a greater impact. So even though you've already kind of touched on it, what are some of the things that you would say, for those listening, for those who are submitted under authority or leadership, what would you say to them in terms of buying into a vision?
That's so good. Well, I didn't always pastor, and I wasn't always the head coach, especially with wrestling. One of the things was that I always said, listen, there's one sound basically that we submit to. Of course, in church it's God, but then whoever God has put in place, because I'm submitting and trusting that they have the vision for where we're going. Yes, I can see things. Yes, I can hear things. Yes, I can know things, but that doesn't, and even I might know more, right? Like I have guys on my coaching staff who have coached. One, actually, my offensive coordinator coached me,
Wow.
right? So it's crazy because, but he doesn't overstep. Like if there's certain things I want to do, he's like, all right, I'll work it and we'll get it in there, right? He always brings his ideas, his concepts. He wants to make sure that we're both going lockstep and key, because what can happen is that if you are submitting to someone in any regard, submission is probably, I tell people all the time, submission is the most powerful thing in the world. And here's why. Submission, what it really means is that I'm submitting myself to a mission. It doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you invaluable. It's your ability to submit to a mission that is bigger than you. So even though there is a leader, we're all submitting to God's mission, because in order for God's mission to be done, there's always going to be one person that has to steer the ship, right? There always has to be one person that's going to operate and function. And what it does is you're bringing yourself into subjection to a greater cause. You're submitting to a mission. something that's going to build. I think about where you go to church at. You guys have so many gifted, so many just unique people at your church. Like you guys have literally like have world changers in your church. But the reality is your ability to submit to what my brother is doing and how he's doing it, because and it creates such a gravity to what you guys are doing and your ability to be able to grow the region and what you're capable of, because the ability to be able to submit to that sound and that voice that God has given him.
For
So
sure.
what I think it does is it creates a greater mission. It creates a greater calling. And like you said, just too much flavor. I had a coach one time. This is when I first was putting together my staff, and he wanted to come back. He was for the previous regime that was there, and I interviewed him. And the first thing he was saying to me was like, "Yeah, when I come in, I think we should do this and do that." And I was listening, and I was like, "Okay." And that interview went like 10 minutes, and I just like, "Okay, nice talking to you, man. We'll get back to you soon."
Like
And
y'all went 0
he,
9.
yeah, right. I mean, I kept one or two guys from the old staff, but the thing was that he was trying to tell me what he wanted to do. He didn't even want to listen to what the vision was. And right then and there, I was like, "You're not coming back. Like, I'm not hiring you because you're already thinking about play calls and you're thinking about what you could implement. I'm not asking that. I'm trying to figure out what kind of person you are, what kind of character traits you got, how did the kids deal with you, how did the kids see you. You're trying to tell me about what you want to do. That's not you're not submitting to a mission. So automatically, you're going to be a coach that's always going to be button heads, which doesn't allow us to move. It's hard to move when everybody's not pulling in the same direction. If you're going right and you're going left and I'm going north and someone else is going south, you're going east, west, north, we're all pulling the boat apart compared to pulling the boat into one direction to be able to move. And so that is what I tell people all the time, is that if you are um, submitting in any way, even my coaches have a lot of guys, they're like, "Man, listen, I don't want your responsibility," because everyone wants what they think they want until they understand what it entails and what's required. So again, it's not just the coaching I got to deal with. I got to deal with parents. I got to deal with administration. I got to deal with my athletic director, who I love. I love all my administration, everybody, but it's just there's elements I have to answer to and things I have to do. I have to handle the booster club. I got to deal with my booster club president about buying different things and can we buy that or can we not buy that? And I got to deal with all the managers. I got to deal with a whole lot of stuff that only thing you got to do is coach a few kids in the position.
Just show up, coach, and go home.
There you go. My job from coaching doesn't stop. I was getting phone calls all weekend on Father's Day, by the way. I was getting email on Father's Day and calls on Father's Day. Not like Happy Father's Day, like, is this going to be okay to do this week? And I'm like, I ain't answer that. It's Father's Day. But, you know,
Look, you got to work. It's Sunday, man, and it's like it's summertime. You're not even in school right now.
yep.
Next thing you're gonna tell me is like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, hey, they show up at your house. Let's just thank God we're not in Texas, right? When they
Oh
when
my
you
God, there's no way.
when you
There's
lose a
no
game and
way.
there's a for sale sign in your yard
Yeah,
before you get
there's no
home,
way. In
just
Texas, if I coached in Texas, nobody would know where I live. You hear me?
right. And it's like you're on the radio. I've seen all the shows and movies,
Oh man, Texas,
but
Texas is a monster. I know some people who coach in Texas, man. It's a different monster, man. They pay extremely well, but they'll fire you real quick too as well.
I think what sticks out to me, just kind of what you said, when you read into these like pre-draft processes for the NFL
Mhm.
or even the coaching search, they'll bring a coach in and say, "Give me your solution for these four different scenarios," and
Right.
or they'll take the players out and for dinner and meet the team and how do you get along? And I think with the kids, right? You don't want to be so picky and choosy because everyone, unless you do, does your school do cuts? You guys do
Football
cuts?
wise, no, we don't. We keep all the kids, so we don't cut football.
So it's like if you want to be here, you can be here. But with the coaches, now you gotta get along with the kids. You can't be a criminal. You can't be a creep. You got to be able to
Oh, they
submit
background
because
check all that before you even get on the field.
right. As soon as a player comes to you, Coach Wiggins was mean to me, and now all of a sudden, you become that kid's favorite coach, and now there's division. It's like
Hmm.
you just need to have a united front, or these kids will get confused and all of that. So it's very noble what you're doing and
I
how you're
appreciate
trying
you.
to build and I know you're doing it the right way, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on with me. I'm sure you'll be on in the future, and we'll have more to talk about. Maybe at the end of your season we can talk about it. But for but
Hope
for
it's a good
those
season, man. Hope
but
it
for
is.
those who want to follow you, just let them know how they can find you, like
Sure.
on social media.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's my name, Desmond Wiggins. Facebook, same thing, Desmond Wiggins. I got to change my profile picture. I think I got to make sure I got my bald head
Hmm.
in my pictures now because I had hair before. But yeah, and then also you can follow me. I just had to create a Twitter. I didn't even have Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I didn't even have one. Just reason I have one. I had one and I never really used it. But because I'm a high school football coach, it's mandatory. I have to have a Twitter handle or X
That's just
handle.
crazy. That's just crazy,
It's like mandatory.
man.
it's like it's like mandatory. It's funny because I'll have college coaches. Like for example, I met with an assistant coach from Syracuse the other day, and he's like, "What's your handle?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I can't even think of something." But like every coach, I've met with coaches from Rutgers, different ones who've come in if they're recruiting a player or asking what kind of players do I have. So my X handle is at Coach Des 16 at Coach Des 16. So if you want to follow me football wise, I'll be posting stuff like that and here goes a picture of my coach Des one, so y'all can know who that is right there. That's my football mean
Look,
look
I
right
might need, I might need that on the thumbnail.
there.
I think we should use that for the thumbnail.
I'm with it.
But
I'm with it. I'll
so
send you that one.
you're
I'll
telling
send you
me I'm
that
not
one.
going to be able to find you doing TikTok dances, right? On TikTok.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely, I'm with it. No, you ain't gonna find me doing the dances. I did one time for the kids. Depending upon how we win and stuff like that, I'll do something goofy for them. They love all that.
Nice.
Yeah, they
But
love all
yeah,
that.
so yeah, guys, follow him on all those places. You can find it in the description, whether you're here on YouTube or whether you're listening on Spotify. Once again, it was so good to be with you, and I'm sure
This
I'll
was
talk to
wonderful,
you
man.
soon. All right, I hope you have a great day.
You too.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As we said, please feel free to follow him, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter, to see what's going on with his coaching life. And I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday for another episode of the Rendered Hope podcast. Have a great day.